States of America. And he is there on the line, whether we're in Sanford, Florida, or we're in Jacksonville, Florida, or we're in Eatonville. He is always standing up and speaking up for us. And we know that. And it is truly an honor to have him here in Eatonville. You know, we've been pretty quiet during this election time. I was over to the supervisor of elections office, and Ms. Bracey, he said over 500 absentees was not counted because people didn't just sign. So, you know, I'm not standing up here talking about who to vote, but we need to make sure we vote, and we need to make sure our vote counts. That's right. We need to vote, and we need to make sure our vote what? Count. Yes. In Jacksonville, we had 2 people. The 2 won elections by 4 votes. So every vote counts. And we got to make sure that we vote and our vote count. I sued the state of Florida to make sure we have early voting. Now I need you to show up. Early voting, you need to show up. We have 10 days. And you know why we do that? Because on election day, our people catch the early bus. And they have to be to work at 7 o'clock and they don't get off till 7. And that's why you have 10 days that we need to, each one of us, be responsible to make sure we get everybody in our house out to vote. That's right. Everybody in what? Our house. You know, when you're born, you get a birth certificate. And when you die, you're going to get a death certificate. And that little dash in between is what you've done to make this a better place. There is no one who's done more than our speaker today. And let's bring him up. Reverend Al Sharpton.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And first to my friend and sister down through the years, Congresswoman Corrine Brown. Let me say that Congresswoman Brown is different than some members of Congress. Some members of Congress, you see their fighting spirit and their strong advocacy in the district. But she is just as strong and just as much an advocate and just as much an irritant in Washington as she is when she come home. You know, I think some of the members of Congress, when they get on the plane, head home, go in the bathroom on the plane and put on a new face so their constituents think they up there really fighting. She doesn't have to do that. I'm a witness that she gives them heaven. I won't be the other time. All the time, day and night in Congress. We don't have a better member of Congress in the United States than Corrine Brown. And to all of our chapters of National Action Network, first Reverend Rivers, who heads our religious affairs and national expansion, and Trudy, who assists him. My 3 chapter leaders stand up for name. Give them a hand. They need chapters here in the state of Florida. And lastly, I thank you all. My birthday was Friday. And I'm just coming out of birthday, but we had a big gala, and then Yolanda Adams did a concert. I turned 60 on Friday. And I'm honored that where it all started, walked in while y'all sing happy birthday, my father, Al Sharpton Sr., is here. And he and Janie, who is my mother now, my mother died, and she is, I don't call my stepmother. She sends me sayings and mothers me. And I called my father on my birthday. He called me, and he said that you 60, but you always be my boy. I said, well, good. I'll call you collect. He said, well, you're 60 now. You can pay for your own phone. But he lives here in Florida. I called him when I landed. I'm glad to see he come in. Let me say this, And I think this is very important. Let me thank the pastor, Reverend Barnes, in his absence, and Minister Smith for hosting us. I've been to Macedonia several times, including one of the first big rallies we had for Trayvon Martin. Was in this church with the parents of Trayvon Martin before we could even get an arrest on the Zimmerman case. So it is not unusual that when we're doing something significant, we come to Macedonia. And as the Congresswoman said, in this town, one of the original black cities in the world, that's known in this country, we are starting a statewide drive to help to give whatever energy we can to getting the vote out in Florida during early voting. I'll be with Bishop Curry, who's the state chair of National Action Network in Miami next week. We're going all over the state, and I'm doing my radio and television shows from there. You was late, put your mic on. Oh, you and Fox, y'all always do. That's what's giving you late. I just got to take a shot. Now, one of the reasons that this is important, several reasons, but one of the reasons is history is not, and Reverend Bracey, who's one of the outstanding ministers in this nation. I was telling him in the office that he was very close to my beloved late pastor, Reverend William Augustus Jones, but he stands as a giant in his own right. We ought not take his presence for granted. And one of the things Reverend Bracey could tell you is that the Bible doesn't deal in confusion, it deals in continuity. Yes, sir. If you read in the Bible, it goes from one generation to the next. And the way you can tell if something is operating correctly is if it is following what it was preceded by. A lot of us try to break and do something new. One of the tricks of having time wasted is folk that think that they got to come up with something new rather than come up with new ways to make what is already happening happen better. Yes, sir. Your job is not to recreate the wheel. Your job is to make the wheel turn that's been turning before you got here. Yes, sir. And that will be turning when you're gone. And we have a fallacy in American culture where we celebrate the young rather than glean the wisdom of the old. So there's nothing more backward than to see old folk trying to act young rather than young folk trying to learn maturity from the old. Come on. That's right. Nothing crazier than parents trying to act younger than their kids. Come on. Kids get home before their mama. Something on Saturday night, Friday night, something backward about that. So every generation, Isaac commended what Abraham did. Joseph, on and on and on. Joshua followed Moses. I remember in 2007, every year we go to Selma to commemorate the march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And those that were there, John Lewis and others are there, those of us that were not old enough to be there, we come, and those who weren't even born come that are younger than us. And the speaker that year was then Senator Barack Obama. And he was getting ready to run for president. And Senator Obama that year, Congresswoman Brown, talked about the Joshua generation. And afterward I told him, I said, one thing you need to understand about the Joshua generation is that Joshua was not just younger than Moses. Joshua came out of Moses' generation and came out of Moses' ministry. So when it was his time to lead, he knew what to do because he came out of the movement that Moses led. Our problem is that we have a lot of folk calling themselves the Joshua generation that didn't come out of the movement, so they don't know what they're talking about or what to do. So you can't inherit a mantle that you had nothing to do with. The reason why Joshua knew what to do at the Jordan is he was there with Moses at the Red Sea. A lot of us that are in leadership today don't know anything about the Exodus and trying to lead into a promised land and never had the map ourselves. So you got to be more than young to lead. You know, I'm young. I should have a chance. Well, you got to be ready. I believe in nurturing young leaders, but nurture them so they're prepared to lead. If your only qualification is you young, that's not no qualification. That just means you was born last. You didn't achieve that. That just happened.
Yes, sir.
And if you need everybody to get off the stage and make room for you, you ain't no leader no how. Leadership don't have to ask for room. You're going to make room. Because your gifts will speak for you. So what we are doing in this generation is in direct connection to the generation ahead of us. The generation ahead of us got us the right to vote. They fought. They were beaten. They were jailed. Churches dynamited. People died, white and black, to get us the right to vote. Nobody gave us the right to vote. Nobody woke up one morning and said, let's be nice and give everybody the right to vote.
Amen.
There was a struggle to get us the right to vote. And don't ever forget that 4 little girls, I was just in Alabama, 4 little girls was in Sunday school one morning. They wasn't even at a rally or a march, just going to Sunday school. Man put dynamite in the church and blew those little girls' lives away. Never knew what they would become. Never became old enough to go to college. Lost their lives to give us the right to vote. 2 Jews and a black, Goodman, Cheney, and Swerve, left the north and came south, and they killed them, mowed them down, and killed them with their eyes open, down in the south to give us the right to vote. They bombed churches, bombed homes, put folk in jail, give us the right to vote. Fannie Lou Hamer went to jail in Mississippi. They got guys in the jail to beat her. Give us the right to vote. And here we are 40 to 45 years later, in Florida, working at jobs that your grandma couldn't work in, living in neighborhoods that they couldn't live, checking in a hotel you want,
Yes, sir.
eating in any restaurant you want, got a little job with a title, and too lazy and ungrateful
Yes, sir.
to get up and use what somebody else got to give you. Something wickedly shameful about those that have inherited so much and won't maintain what they have. So the struggle for Adam Clayton Powell and for those in Congress in the 60s was to help get us the right to vote with Lyndon Johnson. The struggle for Corrine Brown and those in Congress now is to expand and maintain that right. So she went and got the extension by getting early vote. First we couldn't vote at all. Then we got the right to vote. Our generation through Corrine Brown has expanded it now where you can vote 10 days. Question is whether we are going to be so lethargic that we won't step up and use the 10 days when our grandparents are just praying to get 1 day. I mean, can you imagine? Your grandmama couldn't vote. My mother couldn't vote in her hometown till she was 39 years old. It was against the law for her to vote in Alabama. Here you got 10 days in Florida and somebody got to beg you, cajole you to come out and use something that we barely got a half century ago.
That's right.
in Florida, early voting. We must come out in numbers not only because we have many things to vote for, but we ought to come out in numbers just to show how glad we are that those leaders in this generation got us early voting. They want to see a low voter turnout to say, see, early vote don't matter. What Corrine and them raising all that sand for? They don't even come out and vote. That's right. We got to put the numbers up there to show. What was the argument? The argument was we need early voting because everybody that can't work cannot go to vote at the same time. And those that have children and single homes can't vote at the same time. Well, that rationale goes out the window if you don't use the vote. Yes, sir. So you will be undermining the development that has been made in this generation. That's one. Second, there is a concerted effort by the right wing to take our vote. That's right. All over the country, they have come with these suppression efforts. Voter ID, ending early voting, stopping souls to the polls. All of that to squash our right to vote. So in the 60s, we fought Jim Crow. You hear us say now we fighting his son, James Crow Jr. Esquire. He's a little more educated, a little more polished. But it's the same thing, suppressing our vote. So he don't just say, don't let them vote. He comes with little shenanigans, like voter ID, in early voting. Now, how can we see the same right wing that wants to see democracy all over the world, but then want to cut back on voting at home? Isn't it a contradiction to talk about countries that don't have a vote, and back home you trying to cut down the days that people vote? Voter ID. Guy said to me the other day in the airport, Red Mal, ain't nothing wrong with having ID. I said, no, I'm not opposed to having ID. We always had ID. But why do we need special ID now? We had ID all our life. We ain't never voted without ID to register. But the same ID we used when we voted for Nixon and Carter and Reagan and Bush Sr. and Clinton and Bush Jr. Why we get Obama now we need some government photo ID? We didn't need that before. So it's not about voter ID, it's about this special ID they want. In Texas, you can use your rifle or gun permit, but you can't even use your student ID from a state university. So that's geared toward a certain type of voter. Seniors don't have some government voter ID. Lady told me in Florida, I was in Jacksonville, Corrine's district, told me I don't have a driver's license. I'm 88, I don't drive no more. That's right. And I don't need a passport because I ain't going nowhere. That's right. Another lady said, well, I'm on fixed income. I can't afford to go down there, spend $20-something on a passport. So you eliminate a whole group of people, that's right, predominantly in our communities, with these new laws. That's why she's fighting that. And that's why many members of the Congress is fighting that. Because it is prohibited. But it don't matter if we don't get the vote out. There is reasons they want to do that, because if they can lessen the people that vote, they can keep in power the people that have policies that are detrimental to our interests. That's right. So I heard the Congresswoman saying, we're not going to tell you to vote for, and we're not. Somebody asked me, am I for this one or that one? No, I'm for who's for us. Question is not who we support, question is who supports us. So go down the line. We have high unemployment in our community. Last unemployment figures, first time went under 6% in many years, but we are still at 11% unemployed blacks. Yet you have people that go in office to vote against a jobs bill. That's right. Can you imagine with an economy that's just recovering, You got people sitting up in Washington voting against a jobs bill.
That's right.
Not saying our jobs bill is better than the president's. They said, no, we killing the president's jobs bill. We ain't coming with a jobs bill.
That's right.
Voted against infrastructure redevelopment. And not only does infrastructure redevelopment provide jobs, it provides a necessary service. All you got to do is ride down the road and know we need to repair roads and bridges and airports. All of those jobs would not only be beneficial to the economy, it's needed in our cities and our towns and our hamlets.
That's right.
Who's on our side?
That's right.
Stand your ground laws.
That's right.
Who's on our side? Where people based on saying, I thought.
That's right. Yes.
Not that I got evidence, not that I can prove it, just I thought I was in danger. I got the right to kill. But every once in a while, a bright light will come through, like what happened in the trial on Jordan Davis, thank God. When this man tried to use stand your ground and it didn't work. But we should not have to wait on Russian roulette where we hit every once in a while. The law should not be there.
That's right.
But you got to vote about it.
That's right.
Earlier this year, Corrine Brown and all of us marched in Tallahassee about that law. But if we don't vote and vote out those that would come with these backward laws, they will continue to do it again. They are counting on you not to show up. They already sit up in office and say, well, we know they ain't going to turn out but so much. Obama's not on the ticket, not a presidential election, won't be a high turnout of blacks. Well, I come to tell you that Obama is on the ticket.
Yes, sir.
Because everything he stands for cannot happen if you don't have the right Senate and the right members of Congress. Obama's policies will die if you stay home and don't vote. Week before last, we were in Washington, week of the Congressional Black Caucus. Had a press conference, the National Press Club, with the parents of Michael Brown from Ferguson, Missouri, and parents of Eric Garner, the young man killed with a chokehold in New York. The day of the press conference, Eric Holder announced he's resigning. We cannot even get a new Attorney General confirmed if the right wing takes the Senate next in November. Because they will stop every nomination. They are sitting up there now. There's been no Surgeon General. We run around terrified about the Ebola crisis. There is no Surgeon General in the United States that ought to be dealing with the Ebola crisis.
That's right.
We ought to vote about that. That is an insult. How you going to sit there and talk about Ebola's upon us, but you blocking the Surgeon General from being appointed?
That's right.
Cutting health care money.
That's right.
Closing clinics. So on one hand they say, oh, Obama ought to be doing more about Ebola, and the other hand they cut the legs out from what could happen. We need to vote about that.
We do. Yes, we do.
We have an opportunity to fool everybody if Florida show up in big numbers.
Yes, yes.
The whole country, I want you to know that, the whole country is looking at Florida. Ever since y'all had them hanging chads here. Every election, we kind of sleep halfway looking out down here at what they doing down there. Because the country understands that Florida has national impact, and it will have a forecast on the midterm elections and send a signal into 2016. Now, you as leaders and organizers need to get out and get this vote organized, mobilized, and galvanized. Folks tell me, Reverend Rivers and them said, got to fly down and speak to the leaders, don't you? Well, the way you prove you're a leader is to get folk out.
That's right. That's right.
You can't be a leader if ain't nobody following you.
That's right.
You need to be with me, I'm a community leader. Well, how much community can you deliver?
That's right.
I'm an activist. Well, show me where you active. Yes, sir. You can't be a singer if you can't sing.
Yes, sir.
Can't be a writer if you can't write.
That's right.
You can't be an activist if you ain't active.
That's right.
You can't call yourself something. You got to show us what you are. And activism is not always just being on the TV. Activism is going door to door, block to block, church to church, community meet to community meet, doing the hard work.
Yes, sir.
I tell young folk in our leadership classes in our chapter that don't look at me on TV now. I worked 35 years before I could get on TV.
That's right.
We used to have to almost stand on our heads and do flips to get there. You talk about, I want to know, you want to be like me now.
Yes, sir.
But it took a lot of work to get there.
Yes, sir.
You want to be where Congresswoman is now. She didn't start in Congress. She built to that.
Yes, sir.
But if you're faithful over a few years, He'll reward you over many. And that is the work that needs to be done. History ought to say that in 2014,
That's right.
in a midterm election, for the first time, the African American community in Florida showed up in numbers they had not seen. How do we answer stand your ground in Florida? How do we answer our outrage over Trayvon Martin? How do we answer the things that we consider abusive and disrespectful and offensive? We go to the polls.
Yes, sir.
They should not say, in the light of all that we've seen in Florida, that we were missing in action when we had an opportunity to do something about it. You got to tell folk, you might not have marched with us in San.
Yes, sir.
You might not have marched with us in Tallahassee. You might have been afraid of your job if you got involved in the rallies in Miami and Jacksonville and all.
Yeah.
But you can go on election day, smile at the folks,
Yes, sir.
grin if you want. But just get in your own little particle and strike a blow for freedom, and nobody even know what you did but you.
That's right.
This is your chance for everybody to strike a blow for freedom.
Yes, sir.
It doesn't matter if you missed the rally. Rally at the ballot box. Do it early, folks. And let me say this. Don't get tricked into dividing. One of the ways that we've always had problems is if they can break us up,
Yes, sir.
then they break up the power that we have in unity.
That's right. That's right.
Now, there's never been a time that everybody always agreed. They didn't agree in the 60s.
That's right.
They had different roles, but they all complemented each other. I was just in the office talking to one of the lions of the movement, Reverend Otis Moss. Yesterday I called Reverend Joseph Lowry. It's his birthday, 93 years old yesterday. And one of the things that they remind me of in the 60s, before I was old enough to be involved, they had Malcolm, they had Dr. King in the South, Malcolm in the North, Thurgood Marshall in the courts, Adam Clay Powell in the Congress, Fannie Lou Hamer in Mississippi, Gloria Richardson in North Carolina, all at the same time.
Yeah, that's right.
Everybody played their role. They may have got along, not got along, some never even spoke. But everybody was doing in a collective strategy toward the same
Yes,
end.
sir.
So you ain't got to like each other.
Come on now.
But we got to work together. We can fight once we get in power.
That's right.
But we cannot let our differences divide us. And we need alliances with everybody else. We need to work with the Latino leadership. We need to work with the women's groups. We need to work with labor. We need to work with gays and lesbians. We need unity because to protect everybody's rights is to protect our rights.
Yes, sir.
You can't have black rights and say, but I don't want them others' rights.
Come on now.
I hear black folks talk about, well, immigration ain't our issue. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is.
I come down to Florida for Haitians. That's an immigration issue. I grew up in Brooklyn where everybody I went to school was an immigrant from Jamaica or Trinidad. So don't let them say it's the Latinos or the black. No, it's all of us. Same folk don't like the Latinos, don't like us.
Come on now.
Same folk don't like women having equal pay, don't like us.
That's right.
Same folk that want to discriminate against gay, you ain't got to be gay, but you got to be against discrimination.
That's right.
One of these smart reporters asked me the other day, Congresswoman, well, would you perform same-sex marriage? I said, I may have. I don't do inspections before I'm dealing with policy. I'm dealing with y'all's madness. We got to come together in order to change this country in the tradition of those that left it for us. Because I'm going to tell you something, going back to what the Congresswoman said. At the end of it all,
That's right.
your life will only matter is if you've done more than for yourself.
That's right.
Be as successful and as prosperous as you can be.
Yes, sir.
But have some part of your life committed to something higher than you. Because when your life is over,
Yes,
nobody will care what you've done for you because that go with you.
That's right. Yes, sir.
Hardest job, I say it everywhere I go. Hardest job of a preacher is to preach the funeral of an irrelevant person.
Oh, Lord.
Yes, sir.
Lord,
Yes, sir.
That's a hard job.
Yes, sir.
They roll the body down the aisle, lay it out in front of the altar. Family be up on the front row crying and carrying on. And we supposed to get up and hallucinate a life that you never lived. I mean, most folks shouldn't even have a funeral. Most folks ain't done nothing we can talk about. They bought them a house. Well, we'll sell your house for the week is out when you die. Bought you a car. We drive from here to Jacksonville back in your car. We changed the registration late. None of what you have will matter 2 minutes after you're gone. The only thing that will matter is if some community group, some church, somebody could say you helped make the community better. Some child could say you helped teach them something. Do something a little bigger than you so that your life will mean something when your life is over. You ought to ask yourself every night before you go to sleep, if I don't wake up, what can they say about me?
Come on now.
And if you're not satisfied with your own answer, you need to get up and go to work.
Yes, sir.
So that your living will not be in vain.
Come on.
If I ask you who was the richest black in Harlem at 65, nobody in here know.
That's right.
But we all know who Malcolm was.
That's right.
Because his life meant something.
Yes, sir.
If I ask you who had the biggest church in Atlanta in the 60s, nobody knows.
Come on now.
But everybody know Dr. King. Dr. King's church held maybe 300 people.
That's right.
But he shook the world. People that make a difference don't make a difference by what they have. They do it by who they are.
Yes, sir.
So don't get so trapped up in accumulating things that you don't define who you are. Now, I know a lot of folks say, well, Reverend, you don't understand. I ain't got all that kind of background. I don't have no connection. I don't have enough resources. If you have the will, God will provide whatever else you need. Nobody in history had everything they needed. What they did was they made up their mind to make a difference. And God did the rest.
Yes, sir.
That's where something comes in that's bigger than you.
Yes, sir.
I tell the president all the time, I leave y'all with this. I love his book where he talks about hope.
Yes.
A lot of y'all read his book, The Audacity of Hope. Got it from Reverend Wright's sermon.
That's right.
But I told him, I say, you know, Mr. President, there is 2 gears in my transmission. Hope. I grew up with hope. I always hoped to do something. Father said, I started preaching as a little boy, I hope to be a big minister. But then as you grow in life, there are going to be things that hit you that hopes will be dashed.
Yes, sir.
You'll face challenges and tribulations that hope can't bring you through. But I'm glad I grew up in the church that when hope gets jammed,
Yes, sir.
I got another gear called faith. In fact, faith is the substance of things. Hope for the evidence of things unseen. Faith is when the doctors give up, but you hold on for another doctor. Faith is when you got a pile of bills and no money, but you say he will provide all of my needs. Faith is when your friends walk out, when your loved ones don't know your name, when your family turned their back, but you say, I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me now. We come this far by faith, leaning on the Lord, from the outhouse to the White House. I remember, I'm really going to let you go. I remember January last year, we went to Washington for the president's second inauguration. And he had invited head of the NAACP and head of Urban League and I to be a special guest. And we were on the platform, fourth row on the platform, right behind, and the Supreme Court Justice. And I'll never forget Reverend Bracy as they got ready to swear him in. They brought out two Bibles. One was Lincoln's Bible. The other was Dr. King's Bible. And President Obama was sworn in his second term with his hand on these two Bibles. A senator, a couple rows behind me, said, Reverend Al, isn't this a great moment? I said, yes, it is. He said, it's just awesome to see him there holding his hand on two Bibles, Lincoln and King's. I said, yeah, it is breathtaking. I said, but don't be confused, Senator. Those two Bibles are identical. Same amount of chapters, same amount of books, same amount of verses. But they took two different routes to get here. Lincoln's Bible was on the mantelpiece in the White House. Heads of states and captains of industry, leaders of the military looked at Lincoln's Bible. But Dr. King's Bible didn't come that way. Dr. King's Bible came through the backwoods of Georgia and the bayous of Mississippi and Louisiana. Dr. King's Bible went through jail cells. In fact, if you open up the inside cover of Dr. King's Bible, there's the cell number where they checked his Bible in his property in Birmingham. But little did the property checker know when he was checking in Dr. King's Bible to go to jail in Birmingham that one day that Bible would be on the steps of the U.S. Capitol swearing in the President of the United States. He promised he'd make a way out of no way. If we stand up, he'll hold us up. Father, let's stand up and let's vote with a passion. Thank you, God bless.
Thank you. Well, I hope some of y'all will stay because I know I am. For those who were not here before, at the beginning, we did talk about a lot of things. I guess now we got a motivating factor to get on out there and bring additional people to the polls to change everything. Okay, we got less than 20-some days. Now, he went over. He's got to go do his radio show. He will be back this afternoon. And plus he has to do his other show. Those who are staying for lunch, and I know some of you are, just give us an additional 10 minutes to set up and get everybody share. Congresswoman Brown, are you going to want to go on? We're going to set up for lunch. Mingle. If there's any questions, I'll take the question. Oh, can you please? I'm turning the podium over to Congresswoman Brown. All right, y'all again.
I don't know whether there are any questions. All I can say is amen. Amen.